Are live. And so, what I'm going to say here is good morning, B Cube Sunday, last Sunday of the month. And on the last Sunday of the month, it is the honor and privilege to have Jim Wright and David Gerrold. Now, David Gerrold, I would just like to go and start off with oh my God, the Heinlein Award. That is something that is just beyond the realm of mere mortals like us. But for you, oh my God, congratulations!
I admit it caught me totally by surprise, and I'm still gobsmacked when I think about it. Let me just say this: Robert A. Heinlein got me into science fiction. I discovered Rocket Ship Galileo in the Van Nuys Public Library in 1953, and I was hooked. I searched out every Heinlein book I could find from there, and I read everything. And the first time I actually had a chance to meet Heinlein, incredible man, very joyous man, which most people didn't realize, and always wanted to be worthy of his respect as a writer. And so that one of the greatest compliments he ever gave me was how much he enjoyed the War Against the Tor books. I thought, okay, I finally made it. So, but to be, given an honor like this in his name, I knew Robert and Ginny well enough. I think they would have approved of this, but I think it took me a long time to feel that, because I was always trying to just, tell the best stories I could. So I'm kind of blown away by it. Yeah, it's a really nice acknowledgement. I'm very grateful.
Well, you deserve it. Like you said, I think for people of a certain couple of generations, Heinlein was the gateway drug to, he's the guy that the same thing for me. It was the first sci-fi I had ever read. Never even knew what science fiction was, but I was a kid that was in the Jenison Public Library, and there was a rack of these lurid paperbacks by the thing, by the checkout counter. And there was this weird looking book on there with this weird looking, I don't know, purple machine with these weird green stick figures dancing around it. And it was Farmer in the Sky. And I picked that up, and the librarian said to me, "You don't want that. That's not something, you don't want to be reading that kind of stuff." And I'm like, "Ooh."
No, yeah. As soon as somebody says no, I want to. Don't do that. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Now I'm definitely going to read it. And I read that, man, and that was, and again, it's like you said, I have to have more of this. Of course, I grew up in the age when people were landing on the moon and that kind of stuff. And so it was the same thing, it's like you said. But I think you're and somewhere in that process of reading all of that stuff you're not supposed to read, somebody named David Gerrold showed up, and I read all of his stuff too. And so I think you're far more than worthy of the award. Congratulations. It's well deserved.
For the longest time, for the 40s, 50s, well into the 60s, science fiction was defined as Robert A. Heinlein and everybody else. And the same way our solar system is Jupiter and a bunch of crap left over. But I have to say this, because just to be fair, I had two role models for my writing. One was Heinlein and the other was Ellison. And so I was on this pendulum going back and forth between Heinlein and Ellison. And I actually had a couple reviewers say that I read like a combination of Heinlein and Ellison, and I noticed some of my stories are very much over here in the Heinlein, and some of my stories are very much over here in the Ellison. And then there's some stuff I'm doing like The Martian Child, but neither of them could have ever come near. So I feel that I had these two great role models, and I began to synthesize my own voice out of what I learned by reading them. That's, when I'm feeling very arrogant about my own work, I say that out loud.
Well, it's like I said, I think your writing has, you started out writing mostly for television, and so you have a specific formula within that framework of that shared universe that the writers have to adhere to. But you're voice became very distinctive when you started writing. I mean, the opening paragraphs of Under the Eye of God, for example, that's incredible. That's like the kind of poetry that Clark wrote in like the end of 2001, or The City and the Stars. I mean, those words just
trying for a little Jack Vance there. I was writing space opera.
Yeah. I mean, that was
that
again,
whole first sequence is the search for Murdoch.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly distinct. I mean, that's very David Gerrold. I would recognize, even if you took the names off it and took the identifying marks out of it, I would still recognize the cadence and the rhythm and the descriptive, those terms, and so.
Well, that's something I learned from Ted Sturgeon. Theodore Sturgeon is a remarkable writer, not the best human being, but a remarkable writer. And I asked him, I said, what is this business with style, right? And it puzzled me, the whole word. And later on, instead of style, I use the word voice because that makes more sense to me. But he said, he taught me about metric prose, which is where you use a poetic rhythm for the words it forces you to find different ways to say things, but you use a poetic rhythm in your sentences and your paragraphs. And when you change the rhythm, you change the emotional impact of what you're saying. And what I eventually developed is I want my stuff to sound good when you read it aloud. And that goes back to my acting experience, is that you have to write dialogue that the actor can say aloud. Well, you have to write stories that can be read aloud. And so there's a rhythm to language. And so I've been very conscious of the rhythm of every sentence I write almost ever since then. And in fact, it's in the paragraph I was working on last night. It's like, this doesn't flow yet. I have to make this work. So that's what I'll be working on for the next couple hours after we finish, just one paragraph. Dialogue is a lot easier.
Words matter. As I told Bob had asked me about another story in the Mule universe, the last two that I wrote. And, I spent yesterday moving the same line of I like the descriptive line, but I don't know where it goes. And so I've moved it up and down in the paragraph about 3 times now. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. That's perfect. Then I'll go inside, get a cup of coffee, and I come back and I'll sit down and look at it. Eventually you get the right combination of spacing and rhythm and sentence length where then it works. Then you realize that that's actually where it belongs and it goes.
Yeah, there's a story, I forget who said it. Says, I had a rough day writing. I spent the whole day. I finally took a word out. The next day I put it back in. Right. Most people don't understand it, but a writer is looking at that. What is this sentence saying? And and you go into a weird headspace where you become this language thing. And you're looking totally at how does this sentence work?
Right.
And non-writers don't get that.
I do that with the political stuff too, because that emotional impact is what makes a difference. I'm more of I'm not a reporter. I'm not writing news commentary. I'm writing political analysis. And so the sequence of the words, the choice of the words, the rhythm of the words, the way they fit together, the order the idea develops in, is all important. But it translates over to writing fiction as well. And like I said, I think I said this to you before, like a number of years ago. Some writers write like they're building a brick wall. They put one brick after the other and slide mortar in between it, and it works for some people. That's how Asimov always hit me. Is the guy wrote like a chemistry professor, mostly because he was a chemistry professor. And I'm not running him down. I think I had brilliant ideas.
Oh, I'll run him down. I tried to read the third Lige Bailey novel and gave up after 3 or 4 pages because the language was painful. There was no sense of rhythm to the sentences. And it just hurt to read the sentences. And now I should go back and give it another try, but I began to realize how clunky and difficult Asimov's actual prose, and the granularity of it is difficult. Whereas you go to Clark, and there's a rhythm, a poetry to rhythm.
Right. And a lot of his stuff was that way. Foundation, I think, was kind of, it's like reading the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, because essentially that's what it was. And I'm not running it down. I enjoy those books. But he was capable of writing poetry. He wrote a short story called Founding Fathers that was very poetic. But see, Clark was the same way. Clark would write like a professor, and then you would read all the way through 2001: A Space Odyssey, and then you'd hit that end part that was obviously his vision, where he's talking about the Stargate. It's chapter 85, Stargate, and it begins, call it the Stargate. For 3 million years it has circled Saturn, waiting for a moment in destiny that might never come, and it's making a moon have been shattered in the debris of its creation orbit. Is still, and the entire chapter is that kind of poetry and vision, and it's amazing. And then the very next chapter is a discussion of computer programming. And he kind of flipped back and forth between us. So one thing about Heinlein, and to bring us back around to where we started here, is Heinlein always wrote like he was telling a story around a campfire. Whether you agreed with his politics, or you agreed with him, or you agreed with the subject of the things that he wrote about, the guy could tell a goddamn story. You look at his novels and they're very lean. There's an economy of style, but the guy could tell a story.
Oh, yeah.
Bang, 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 all the way through. He could tell a story. And
I think that might have been one of the results of his military training, is don't waste language.
Right.
And
there's probably some of his academy training, and certainly some of his personality. And like I said, whether or not you agreed with his politics, or you agreed with the subjects that he wrote about,
don't ever assume that those were his own politics. He put stuff into
and that's what I talk about. And that's what I tell people when people come to me and say, well, Starship Troopers, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, again, you're confusing the story with the writer. The guy wasn't writing. The guy wasn't trying to develop a political philosophy. He just needed a backdrop to hang a story, a coming of age story on. All right. All of us who've been in the military recognize that arc. He just needed something to hang the damn story.
I'll tell you, with the background of the story, is he read something in the news that pissed him off. Something that he felt was, I think it was God, I don't even remember now. It was some peace demonstration that he felt was ill-advised.
Right.
And he wrote Starship Troopers to say that if you benefit from the society you live in, you have a corresponding obligation to protect the working of that society. Right. And that's what Starship Troopers was all about, your obligation to your civilization. And
I think that part that a lot of people miss too is that he tended to lecture here and there, and he stuck those pieces throughout the story. And in one of there's a very brief line about halfway through, and Johnny Rico sitting in his history of moral philosophy class, and the teacher's lecturing. And one of the things he asked a question. He says, why is our civilization better than everybody, better than any of the ones that came before? And you think of the standard road answers. And the professor tells him, no, that's not true. It's not better. It's just the one that we have. And it wasn't trying to say that was a civilization, that's something we should aspire to, that militaristic service background. It was simply saying, this is just the one we have. We got to make the best of it. And so there's that brief moment, that Heinlein disclaimer that's buried in there somewhere, but you got to be sharp enough to see it. And
Heinlein stacked the deck a lot. He stacked the deck to make the stories work. In Starship Troopers, the enemy had to be bugs, because if it was other human beings, you couldn't make the same point.
Right.
And the same thing.
Stranger, he did a lot of
stacked the deck in Stranger as well.
Yeah. Oh, he did it. He did it in all of them. I mean, especially the juveniles. If you look at what was the one? The Stobor one, the doorway.
Tunnel in the Sky.
Tunnel in the Sky, right. He stacked the deck on that one to make the point that he wanted. And that's what always kills me when people talk about, Heinlein was pro-gun, he was pro-this. I'm like, you obviously don't read all of his stuff, because Tunnel in the Sky makes exactly the opposite argument, where everybody who's heavily armed gets wiped out, and it's the guy who avoids conflict, who uses his brain instead of his brawn, that survives the story. Again, the guy's a storyteller. He wasn't trying to found a religion. He was writing stories. He created a premise and he put a story in there that he wanted to tell. And that's what the brilliance of it was. Again, whether or not you agree with what you think his politics were or not is separate from the fact that the man could tell a story. He could write a damn novel. He could sit down and crank it out and make a living doing it. And that's separate from everything else, I think.
Yeah,
so,
let me share a story with you. I went to, I think it was my 30th high school reunion, and I sat down with the other nerds I had hung out with, and one was his computer and one was working at JPL and was wearing, and they had all had pretty good careers, and I'd written a script for Star Trek, right? All right. I mean, who knew? Okay. So but at one point in the discussion, I don't remember, somebody said something. I said, I had dinner with Robert A. Heinlein, and he said, and the whole table went, what? Like those old E.F. Hutton commercials where the whole room goes silent. And they all looked at me and said, wait a minute, you had dinner with Robert A. Heinlein? I said, yeah. Because by that time it was like, yeah. And I suddenly realized we were no longer functioning in the same plane of reality.
Right.
But what happened at that dinner was really funny. We didn't talk writing, not at all. We talked about everything but writing, because Heinlein didn't talk about writing.
Right.
But I did at one point, I said, I have the first line of a story. I don't know where it goes. And Robert said, well, maybe I can help you with it. I said, all right, ready? Neil Armstrong stared in horror at the bug spots on the windshield of the lunar lander. Okay, so Robert puts his head in his hands like this. And I'm going, what? And all of a sudden I hear, I'm like, oh my God, he's having a stroke. He's choking to death. Oh my God. Then I realized he was laughing. He was laughing so hard he was overcome. And I'm thinking, oh my God, he's going to die. I'll be the man who killed Heinlein with the killing joke.
The man who killed Heinlein is a story all to itself.
Yeah, I could use that title anyway, but he laughed like crazy. I did use that gag in a Star Trek novel where James T. Kirk is on the surface of the moon and has to figure out why there are bug spots on the windshield of the lunar rover. And it turns out it's lube being thrown up by the wheels.
Right.
And it's a test. So I did get to use that, but Robert had an incredible sense of humor. And I had sent him a copy of A Matter for Men, a hardcover, because it was dedicated to him and Ginny. I figure he'll put it on the shelf, and he'll get back to whatever he's doing. Okay. About 4 or 5 days later, the phone rings. I pick it up. David Gerrold, you're a very nasty man. I didn't recognize, but who is this? It's God. Oh, hi, Robert.
It wasn't wrong.
No, he wasn't wrong. He says chapter 14. I think that was the one. He says that was very upsetting. I said, good, I got my job done. It was supposed to be upsetting because it was very upsetting. Yes, it was. It's like that was one of the hardest chapters to write. It's the one where Jelana and they go to look at the feeding the dog.
Right, yeah.
And Robert acknowledged that's very upsetting, but that's high praise coming from Robert A. Heinlein, because the goal of that chapter was to really upset the reader. And so we had fun. He would call me and tell me jokes sometimes, and vice versa. One time he called to talk about something he'd read in The Economist. I hadn't read the article. He says, we can't talk about it because you don't know what you're talking about. I said, right, let's talk about something else. So, I mean, it didn't mean it as an insult either.
Right.
Some people would have been insulted and say, no, you're right. I don't know this article. But he was keeping up with a lot of stuff. So, and I mean, his office, the one time I visited, he had a stack of books on China. Yay, hi. I said, you're going to do a book that takes place in China? Because he was getting all over the world. And he says, I don't know. I'm just reading about China. And this was a man who clearly loved doing research because it showed up in his books. Stranger has whole chapters derived from Korzybski's General Semantics. which you wouldn't recognize unless you had also studied Korzybski in general semantics. So, which I had. So, he was at one of the last World Cons that he attended was in Boston, and I was there, and he was standing alone in the dealer's room, and I went up to say hello. We were good friends at that time, and I said, "Robert, how are you?" And he said, "Fine," and we chatted. He says, "David, I have a story idea for you." So, all right, well, Robert A. Heinlein's going to give me a story idea. I'm going to go home and write it. He leans over very conspiratorially, says, "Boy meets girl." I said, "All right, I should give you a story idea too." And he says, "Okay." I said, "The man who learned better." We both learn, I mean, that's so those are my 3 really good Heinlein stories, 3 or 4. And I'm going to share them again when I go to Baltimore to accept. There's this humongous medal they give you, and then a couple lapel pins that you can wear if wearing the medal is a little too. So, and I think there's also a wall thing, which will probably, that's one of the, I get these certificates from time to time, and I know some people just cover their walls with them. I don't, because I don't want to be that person. I want to be the one who's attacking the keyboard for the next story. Not, I don't want to be in the past. I want to be in the future.
Right.
So, I don't even keep most of the trophies there. I keep my Hugo and my Nebula and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you better. Yeah.
But there are some things that have been handed to me that have not been kept, which sometimes I think, gee, I wish I'd kept that one. But it's, it's look at behind me. That I got to cull this stuff, right?
That's the thing, man. You wind up with you. Yeah, that's exactly it. I got to keep throwing things out or run out of space in my office. The only thing that goes on my wall are my photography. So.
Oh, I love your photography. Yeah, whenever you post it, I do a capture. I save the image, and then because I have my desktop set up to shuffle the images, the wallpaper,
right?
And so I add yours to the file where the folder where all the wallpaper is. So your stuff shows up regularly.
Right.
So right now on the other screen, there's lightning.
I haven't had a chance to take much this month. I haven't. My health hasn't been great the last couple of months, and so I don't want to talk about.
Tell me you're getting better.
We'll see. I'm not getting worse at the moment. I'm not getting worse. So
okay, well that's a step in the right direction.
So that's an improvement. So
hey, I'm slowing down too. So I sympathize.
Yeah, it's 20 years of military stuff. It just catches up to you after a while. There's just nothing you can do about it. And so this month has been a little rough, but I'm hoping the next couple of months things will get better, and we'll see what happens.
Are you going to be able to come to Pensacon in February? Are you going to be able to make it?
I'm going to do my best. I wasn't going to because I'm not real thrilled with the protocols here in the state of Florida. But if you're going to be there, and I saw Adam Troy Castro was planning.
Yeah, he's going to be there too. Yeah.
So if the 2 of you are there, I'll definitely show up. I talked to Melinda Snodgrass. She's going to
be there.
She and I were there last year, and I got to show her around Pensacola a bit and buy her breakfast and do that kind of thing. But she's going to beg off this year, and. But if you guys are going to be there, then I will definitely show up for at least a day.
They just asked me if I'd be on a panel with her, and of course I will. So,
yeah, Melinda's one of my favorite people in the universe, and
she's the best. She is so smart and
amazing,
so insightful, and she has some of the best stories to share.
Yeah.
It's just I love hanging out with her, and she's so caring.
She's a blast. She's one of my favorite people in the universe, and
she was. When we went through that kerfuffle with the 2015 Worldcon, she was an enormous support for me. Emotional support. She was right there.
I had breakfast with her every morning down there in the lobby of the main hotel, and we'd sit there and eat breakfast, and the sad puppies would go past and give us dirty looks. And we how you doing, fellas? Keep right out walking,
They still hate me. God knows why, because I mean, all I did was say, tell me why you think these stories deserve to be on the Hugo ballot. And that was, I'd get this, the crickets were louder. So.
Well, it's the same bunch of them, and it's funny, and again, science fiction is always a reflection of larger things. And I'm watching a lot of the same people right now just turning their colons inside out over the fact that you know that there's an opening on the Supreme Court, and that opening will probably be filled by a woman of color. And I watched the same people making the same arguments that they were making at the 2015 Worldcon about the Hugos that are just shitting their colons inside out about the fact that a white man ate first in line. And it's just sad to me, man. You know, it's sad to me that these guys are like, I'm like, write a better story, man.
That's what I've always said, you know, when
you know, I'm not going to, you know, and somebody asked me about it this morning here on Twitter. You know, I'm not going to, I wondered if I was going to mention it here, and you're damn right I'm going to mention it. Yes, I'm eligible for the short story Hugo Award this year. By God, please vote for me. And I'm not, you know, and I'm not. I would be flattered to be nominated, but if I'm not, what I know is that whoever wins, it's going to be great stuff, because it's great stuff every year. And so what that means is we get great stuff. And if you really want that goddamn award, then sit your ass down in front of the keyboard and write something better. You know, it's you know, that's the goal here, not to trick the slate to get your shit on it. And I mean, I don't know. It's just the whole thing cracks me up.
Let me tell you, I just turned in a story to the Three Time Travelers in anthology, and Michael Ventrella, if I remember correctly. And the story I wrote, and because I was like, nothing appeals to me, and suddenly something occurred to me, and I have my future self, Dorothy Fontana and Harlan Ellison, visiting me at a key point in my life, trying to get me to put on a time belt and go change something. And it is a brutal story. It's not funny. And it's drawn.
I just like the idea of the three of you all hanging out together.
It is a fun. It was
that idea.
You know, the hard part was trying to put words in their mouths, because they, you know, Harlan had a distinctive voice. Dorothy did not quite have that same distinct language, but I think I managed to be good enough on that. But the thing is, the story is drawn from the same brutal emotional place where I drew The Martian Child from. And people are going to read this story. It reveals something from my past that, you know, some internet carrion feeders have been brooding and speculating about for a while. But it's like, okay, you're going to speculate about it, I'm going to write it. And, you know, and so, and I'm thinking, like what you said, I think the story deserves consideration for the Hugo or the Nebula or whatever. In an anthology, it's unlikely to be noticed. I'll make it available to people because I think it's worthy of consideration. But I'm not going to campaign in the sense of, oh, please vote for me. Because I saw Asimov in front of an audience of 3,000 people begging people to vote for the gods themselves. I'm an old man. It's my last chance. Please vote for me. And I'm thinking, this is the most embarrassing thing I have ever seen any writer do is campaign for an award. And I said to him right there, I said, Isaac, you don't have to do this. You know, your book is great. You can win the Hugo just on the strength of the book. Don't do that. He says, I'm an old man. Said, all right, Isaac. And of course, he beat my book When Harley Was Won by 3 votes. So now, I don't know how much of it was his book or how much of it was his campaigning. I don't care. I think it was wrong for him to campaign that way. And this was like 1972 or 73. And I made up my mind. I will never, never, never campaign for an award. I will make sure that, you know, if I think something is award worthy, I'll let people know it's available. I'll make it available because that's okay. Here's for your consideration. But I will never, ever beg people to vote for something. That was just wrong.
David, can I interject for a moment?
Yeah, please.
There is a writer I know that wrote a story called The Miracle Man.
Who's that guy?
I will gladly send you a copy so that if you do find it worthy of your letting people know,
please send me a copy.
Because I think Jim Wright wrote a very good story there.
Yeah, I like it. You know, this story came out great, and I really enjoyed writing it, and it made me want to write more stories in that universe and that kind of thing. And like David said, you know, the story's available. If you like it and you think it's worthy of it, vote for it. If you think something's better, vote for that, man.
Yeah, I agree.
I win either way, because I get nominated or I get something that's better to read for myself. So I don't really see the downside of it. more, and like you said, I'm not gonna big word. One thing that cracked me up though is you mentioned that, and the Asimov thing, and what I'm always reminded of when I hear that story, and the other one is, if you remember, Niven and Pornell wrote that first Inferno book, and
which I thought was terrific. I thought
which
it
is
was
great. I mean,
very-
I love that. I really love that, because Dante's Inferno is one of my favorite things. But anyway, the story begins with Carpentier. That's exactly what he's doing. He's going from party to party at Worldcon, begging for votes, and he's trying to impress people. So he sits in the window and chugs a fifth of something and falls backwards out the window, and that's how he dies and winds up in hell. And so when you're talking about campaign, I'm like, oh, that never ends well, And there's a line in that story that I use for myself probably daily, and the line is Carpentier demonstrates his inability to learn. And so when you're telling that story about self-promotion and campaign, on the other hand, writers nowadays, especially, the noise floor is very high. There's a lot of great stuff out. There's a lot of crap out there too. And so and with social media, you do have to do some degree of self-promotion, but there's a difference between, I think, self-promotion, begging, and one's part of the profession, and the other one is a lack of dignity. And and again, I would prefer stories, including my own, that are nominated on the strength of the writing and the storytelling, because we all benefit from that. It's not about it's not a check in the box. I don't know. People see things different ways. I just like the story, and I think I did a good.
Actually, you made me think of something. I'm going to send you this story, the time traveler story, because I'm trying to think of a better title for it. It's called Time Out right now, but I'm trying to think of a better title. But I'll send it to you and see what you think. So it'd probably tell you something about me you didn't know too. So, all right.
I assume there's a whole shitload of things I don't know about you, and I'm okay with it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's it's funny. It's you look at this stuff and you look at, and I am signed. It's funny. I got my registration for Chicago. I'm being optimistic about my health, that I'm going to be in Chicago in September. And by goddamn, I missed the last Worldcon due to things that I couldn't control. And I was literally driving out of the driveway when that went south. And so I fully plan on I was literally at the end of the driveway when my son ran out of the house and said, Mom's on the phone and we got something going on. You need to get back in here. And so that's when everything went to hell right there. But I fully expect to be in Chicago. And when I signed up the other day and paid for my membership and sent it in, I got a note back a little while later saying that they accepted it. And the hell did it say? It said something, dear Jim, and then behind it bracket, it says, "We know this is really you, Stone Kettle." Welcome aboard. Man, whoever wrote that, I thanks a lot, because I about fell out of the chair laughing. That was great. I really appreciated that. So I thought that was.
Let me tell you, Jim, you weren't sitting at a dealer's table with a large pile of Jim Wright stories.
I know. I'm sorry about that.
And no, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry, because I tell you, just watching your fans circling the room, waiting for the opportunity to get you, it was awesome. I mean, there's just some writers that attract, that their work is so good.
No,
their fan base is so.
I think that's true. A lot of people have David. I run into people all the time. Every time I mention David on Twitter, 10,000 people show up to tell me how great he is. Oh, you got to meet him. I'll do that someday. And,
next time, tell him to sign up for my Patreon page. We're trying to get. We have to remodel the house so we can sell it and move to Vermont, and so it's a question of income. So I'm going to do another GoFundMe on that, and I'm going to ask you to put out the word on that one, because last time
I'll be there. Let's talk.
You saved my house last time.
We'll
Vermont, David Gerrold in Vermont. Wow, that's amazing. I can.
Yeah, because then I can hop on a train and visit people all over the East Coast. So
That's like that's a whole nother shitload of cons to go to, and great ones. I mean, some really great ones up in that New England, man.
Well,
I used to live in Maine, so
Los Angeles is a bit of a geographical trap because you are anywhere from 5 to 8 hours away from San Francisco or Phoenix or Nevada, whereas on the East Coast, you're only at, the worst is a 3-hour train ride.
Right.
So, and I would be able to, come winter, go down to Florida, Disney World or something, and say, so I'm looking for my retirement home. Los Angeles is not a great place for retirement anymore. And Sean and Elise are very clear they want a better place to raise Aiden, and I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah.
So
that's it's great. I used to live in Vermont, I thought, and then of course I didn't live in Vermont, I lived in Maine. I didn't live in Vermont, but then New England, and so that whole area is great. And and then we lived in Alaska. I've lived in Alaska probably longer than I lived anywhere else as an adult. And we had to move down here to Pensacola, and I missed Alaska terribly, but I will tell you that I miss shoveling snow less and less with every hour that goes by. I'm watching the news today of the East Coast buried under 10 feet of snow, and I'm like, man.
I told Sean, we moved to Vermont, I'm not going out of the house between November and April.
Right. I hurt bad enough as it is most of the time, and I'm like, oh yeah. And
I'm curious how Sean's going to react to the first big snowstorm we have to deal with in Vermont. But
he's young; he'll get out there and tear it up and have a blast.
He's not that young anymore. He's pushing 40.
Oh yeah. I wish the hell I was pushing 40, David.
My kid is 30. He'll be 38 in 5 months.
Right. Yeah. So, it's a man. I can't believe it. Kid from The Martian Child is 40.
Neither can I. He was a cute kid. Then he turned into, Sean's.
Yeah,
I'm joking. He's a handsome guy.
Yeah.
He's still getting hit on by. He doesn't go out very often, but he comes back and says, "The clerk was asking me if I wanted her phone number."
Right. Yeah, that's it's funny how fast it goes by the older you get. And no, I look at it, and we've all kind of moved around, and I don't know that I'll stay here the rest of my life, but I probably will. And the environment here, the climate's not too bad, and the cost of living's not bad. The neighbors are a little problematic, but
well,
on the other hand, I write about politics, so
neighbors are going to be
I never had a loss of
anywhere.
subject matter, so
So
if I feel like I haven't written about anything today, all I got to do is go down to a local hardware store and hang out for 10 minutes, and then I got a week's worth of stuff. I got to get back to it. Like I said, if those of you that are watching that have been sending me email and asking why there hasn't been a lot of content posted, I've been pretty sick the last month. I don't want to talk about the details of it. I am allegedly getting better now. The doctors finally think they've got a handle on it, and so we're working our way back out of it. But for the last couple of weeks, I have sat in this chair and watched YouTube videos all day, and that's a good day. So we're getting there. I actually picked up a camera, went outside, took pictures of ice crystals this morning. So
good.
That's a huge improvement. So
I had a question for not to interrupt the ice crystals, because Jim, we all love your photography. It is
whatever. Get to it.
Hey, whatever my butt. I put your photography on the cover of the book. It's
that took
stuff.
a sudden turn that I wasn't expecting, but all right. Anyway,
I had a question for David. I wanted to get out of him before I forgot it. Hella.
Yes.
So what's our sequel probabilities here?
Well, it's half written. I know the story. And I'll tell you a little bit. It's called A Handbasket to Hela. And they discovered that another ship has arrived and set up an unauthorized colony on the eastern continent. And they get a distress message. And then when they try to contact that colony, we didn't send it. Leave us alone. Stay away from us, blah, blah, blah. And of course, they're going to send a rescue mission to find out what's going on over there, and particularly because this other colony is violating all the rules for that had been set up for Hela. So Kyle goes along. He's probably about 16 Earth years old at this point, And so we get a journey south to the ice cap, across the ice cap, and then back north up the eastern continent. And I haven't gotten to the ice cap yet. That's where I got interrupted. But I'm getting back to it in a couple of weeks. I'm not going to tell you much more than that, but I have a pretty good idea what happens. One of the things that there's a lady named Susan Frank who she said, "Can you put my dog Teddy into it?" And so Kyle meets a dog for the first time because there's no dogs in the Hella colony that I wrote about. So he's freaked out when he meets this dog. And so it'll be a boy and, making friends with the dog. I don't know what happens to the dog. I'm not a person who likes to write about a dog dying. I don't even read books. If somebody tells me the dog dies, I don't go to the movie.
Right.
So,
well, you know, one of the great impressions Hella made on me?
Tell me, thank you.
Oh, no, it's the way you treated the planet. Okay. The idea that we're here, part of what we're doing is basically not to abuse it. Because right after I read that, I tried to read a book about the westward expansion of the United States, and I read about what they found in Ohio when they first started going into Ohio. They found black walnut trees that were 12 foot in diameter, just these huge, wonderful, just that vision of how effectively we destroyed that, and reading Hella and how much you're putting into that book about how to coexist with an ecosystem, one that's not particularly even nice to you. I was impressed, and I thought that is just doing my fan blah.
Well, thank you.
That's a consistent theme with David, though. I mean, the war against the tour is
it's about ecology. It's about how we live in harmony. It's about living in harmony.
Yeah.
And I think to a great degree, again, coming back to Heinlein, is like writing from a Heinlein voice or Heinlein grounding allows me to make it more immediate than some of the others that get a little mystical, or we live in harmony with the planet. No, it's this is gonna happen if you kill this whole ecosystem collapses. And to say it in very blunt terms, I think is it hits home a lot harder than all of the we're living in peace with Gaia. Yeah, okay, fine, but that doesn't hit home the same way as rabbits in Australia. Tribbles. Yeah. People talk about tribbles here. It is like 55 years later, and they're still talking about tribbles because tribbles is an ecology story. So, but
and it's sci-fi. Home. Good sci-fi has always taken current events and topical subjects and warnings that we can see coming in the future and turn those into cautionary tales or tales that should educate future generations. I mean, that's some of the reasons that, again, to go full circle back to where we started, that's some of the reasons that Heinlein is still so relevant to a lot of people, is because a lot of the things that he talked about, again, whether you agree with them or not, are still very relevant, especially some of the political stuff that he talked about.
Oh, yeah. Heinlein had a lot to say about patriotism, and it wasn't, from that jingoistic fascist point of view that some people very conveniently assign to him because they haven't paid attention.
Right.
It is from this, is if you are a part of a society that you have benefited from, you have an obligation to sustain that society. But he has also said, because if you look at Muna's Harsh Mistress, if it doesn't work for you, do what you can to change it, which is about a revolution. Now, I think Heinlein sometimes didn't pay attention to what was scientifically known at the time. For instance, in the one where they're flying in the flying car and Dora is this sarcastic voice. Is you programmed her with all these canned messages. She could have had an intelligence engine, an artificial intelligence. In Muna's a Harsh Mistress, the cause of the revolution is not enough water. That could have been solved by going out to Saturn and bringing back an ice asteroid. Asimov did that in The Martian Way, and Heinlein had to be aware of that story. And also, I'm, you know, I don't think it's cost effective to send prisoners to use the moon as a penal colony like Australia.
Right.
That was the part that is like, I have to accept that Heinlein found a justification for it if I'm going to read this story.
Well, sure. I mean, again, you know, he contrived. He could, you know, again, he's telling a story. He contrived an environment to tell a damn story in. You know, and
yeah, it was necessary for the story. I would have justified it differently, but it doesn't ruin Munazar's Mistress for me, because it's really about how to do a revolution when a revolution is needed. And
right.
It was his take on the American Revolution, which was it was a metaphor for the American Revolution.
Right.
Now,
I mean,
let me say this:
yeah.
Of all of the countries that Britain colonized, of all of the land that Britain colonized, America, the United States of America, we're the only ones who threw the Brits out. Everybody else waited for them to die of boredom and leave.
Right. Well, yeah, but we got all the religious nuts. Australia got the cool criminals and stuff, you know. And so I'm not sure.
I have a friend I have a high school buddy who lives in Australia now, and he posted a thing just last night or early this morning in time frame about how the Brits really fucked over Australia. Especially there was a very strong, proud culture of the Aborigines. And the Brits, even today, the Aborigines are treated worse than second-class citizens, because the Brits have, you know, they sent the dregs of society. They used it as a penal colony. And I have to go back and reread his message, but it's horrifying. So the Brits did not treat any, I mean, England went to India. What they did to India, India still is in the process of recovery from what the Brits did. And, you know.
But again, society's changed over time, and those were attitudes that were very prevalent. And then you're still seeing that now. You see that reflected 200 years later in how we treat people, how we regard things. You see this reflected in politics today. I have current events that I'm looking at this morning of how we regard, I mean, you still very much see a sense of manifest destiny in a lot of Americans who right now are put out by the very idea of somebody who is not a straight white Christian man sitting on the Supreme Court. And you very much see that, you know, again, there are people that fight against, there are people that embrace the future and change, and there are those that fight to preserve the past, and those are the fundamental, and you see that very much nowadays. But you also, again, sci-fi tends to be, or science fiction tends to be, a reflection of those things, and you very much see that within our own community of those that want to preserve that traditional Heinlein-esque big three 1960s version of sci-fi, and those that are mad about the fact that the genre and the community has changed, and that, for example, like N.K. Jemisin has won the Hugo for A Black Woman is a fantastic story. It's not the fact that she wrote this incredible, if you've read her stuff, she's a freaking amazing. But the fact that Black Woman won the Hugo 3 years in a row is just infuriating to these people. They feel like they're not getting
the thing is,
of it.
You know, you can't go back to Heinlein, but you can stand on his shoulders. You can,
sure, and that's exactly it. Yeah, and that's exactly it. And you can acknowledge that. But again, you know, there are so many fantastic writers working today, and this is the community and the genre is so much better for this diverse, expanding base of writers and ideas and inclusion. But again, I consistently see, you know, two types of science fiction people, and those are the folks that, you know, look at the universe in the Star Trek fashion, which is, you know, the original Roddenberry idea that the universe was vast and strange and weird, and it's so cool to go out there and discover it. And the other half, which is the universe is vast and weird and strange, and we need to conquer it and kill those sons of bitches and make it like us. And again, you see those two very, and again, I'm simplifying here, but again, you see those same attitudes reflected in America and the larger world, and increasingly in the larger world, sad to say, today, of those that say, yeah, man, America's supposed to be a land of opportunity. Come here, make us richer, make us better, make us more diverse. We're a land of immigrants, and those that say, build a goddamn wall and keep all those people out. And I see that reflected a lot in religion. A lot of people that read my political stuff, which is mostly what I write. Have heard me say this.
Somebody made the point recently, religion didn't end slavery. The innate moral sense of human beings ended slavery, regardless of religion. Religion was used to justify slavery.
Religion justified slavery, exactly. And again, I see this reflected in religion, in certain very loud, outspoken religions here in the United States. And people regard the U.S. the same way they regard their religion. It's not heaven if everybody gets to go. And America's not great if everybody gets in. We got to draw a line around it, got to put a fence up with a gate and a guard. And it's only great if it's just the kind of people that we like. And that's exactly how a lot of these people regard paradise in their religion. There isn't a religion out there that says, hey, everybody gets it. We're all going, what if the test, and I've written about this, what if the test is, you're like, I did everything right, but my family's a bunch of sinners. You get to the gate and the guy says, yeah, you can come in, but none of your family, none of the people you love can come in. And what if the test is where you stand there and say, well, if they can't go, if everybody can't go, I ain't going.
Remember the Twilight Zone episode, the old man and the dog drown?
Absolutely.
And he comes to the gate and the guy says, you can come in, but we don't allow dogs in here. And the guy says, then I ain't coming in.
I ain't coming in.
Like, yeah, I've said that. And it was hell. It was, who would you betray, to go? And so.
I see so many people, and you see it reflected in like attitudes with like COVID and vaccine. Again, we're right back around to the ideas that you were talking about earlier, David. And I keep pointing to the screen like you can see who I'm pointing at. But again, either you're a member of society, you have a sense of community, a duty to others, or you don't. And so many Americans have adopted this idea that they're mountain men who live free in the wilderness by themselves. And of course, none of that's true. These people, again, it's this morally bankrupt position of they want all the benefits of society, but none of the responsibilities. And you see this reflected with COVID vaccination right now of I'm safe, screw you. Well, and a lot of these people are not safe. Look at this cop, Robert LeMay, who died yesterday. The guy
I was just going to bring that up. Have you ever noticed
governor to kiss his ass? I'm like, congratulations, dude! You just kissed your own ass.
Almost every day, you turn on the news, or you log on, and one of the anti-vaxxers who's I'm not getting vaccinated has died of COVID, and while part of me is saying, well, the karma fairy really got you, it's like you guys are not helping. We are not going to get out of this.
I don't know how that you become so goddamn selfish that you don't give a shit about anybody else. But again, these are the same people that can walk past homeless people. They can walk past people that are hungry. These are the same people that don't think every American or every human, not just American, but every human being should be entitled to health care, to food, to shelter.
We have enough. We have enough homes. We have enough food. We have enough hospitals. We can provide to everybody. And, and there are countries like Denmark and Sweden that do. But we've logged ourselves into, well, you don't deserve it. Right. It's like, no, everybody deserves it. Everybody deserves it. You think of a pack of chimpanzees, they all get to feed. Now, maybe the senior chimpanzees get the best fruit, but the whole pack gets to eat.
Right.
And here we are, the chimpanzees will take care of each other. Or a herd of water buffalo, if a lion goes after the calf, the whole herd goes after the lion.
Right.
We're not that way. What happened to us? How did we turn into, I got to have mine to hell with the rest of you. How
Right.
did we turn into that? I don't
know.
get
It's
that.
amazing, you know, and these are, and in fact, this is part of what I'm trying to explore in some of the stories that I'm writing. Apparently I'm now writing stories about the mule, and in fact, that's the current story that I'm working on now that deals with some of these kind of events of this, idea of either you're part of civilization or you're not, and either you have an obligation to others or you don't. And again, as soon as you say that, though, there's a certain element in the United States that their back goes right. What do you mean obligation to others? You talk about socialism where you don't have any identity of your own, and everybody gets, and everybody, there's no meritocracy. There's nobody. I can't be better than everybody else. We all have to be the same. And I have to look at that and think, my God, what the hell is the matter with you? But again, these are the same people who think that liberty, that justice, that equality, that civil rights are all zero sums. And if somebody else gets more, if anyone else is raised up, they're somehow diminished. And this is the inevitable result of years and years and years of people telling you that that your worth, your self-worth, your value as a human being to society depends entirely on how big a truck you drive, how big a house you have, how big your muscles are, how, whether people find you attractive, how many followers you got on fucking
Well, that's
Facebook.
part of the effect. That's the message that television says. Are you beautiful? Are you rich? All those commercials. Do you have this really great car? And the internet, it has allowed narrowcasting. How big is your gun, right?
Right.
And the thing is, and this thought is not original with me. I've seen it a lot of places, but it is clear to me is the evil is the absence of empathy. The absence of empathy for animals, the absence of empathy for other human beings, the absence of empathy for the world you live in.
Yeah.
That's evil, because that allows you to do horrible things to other people, to animals. It allows you to, oh, look, we're going to cut down this 3,000-year-old redwood so we can have nice redwood paneling. It's like, you assholes.
Right. Especially
how do we teach empathy?
Right. Especially in an environment where and again, you're not cutting down a 3,000-year-old redwood tree to have redwood paneling because that's the only option there is, or you're going to be without shelter. It's because you're somehow superior to everybody else if you have a wall of endangered wood that can't be replaced in the history of humanity, right? You're special, you're better. And yet you live in a society that is technologically advanced enough that could create paneling that's beautiful and wonderful, environmentally friendly, and doesn't destroy something that can't be replaced. But that doesn't have the same value to you as being able to destroy something so that no one else can have it except for you. And I see this stuff. And this is, it's like you said, we've been tricked by generations of this kind of mentality here to believe that our self-worth is a relative measure, that I can't be happy with myself unless I'm better than you, unless for some reason, unless there's something wrong with you, with your who you are. If I can't find a way to put you down, I can't be raised up. And you look, there's no happy ending to that mentality. But there's nowhere where you yourself will ever be happy with who you are, ever. And if you look at societies where people don't have that, where their self-worth is not measured in their relative position to others, those societies are a hell of a lot more sane and a hell of a lot more stable and a hell of a lot more satisfied and happy, and people themselves are happy. And here in America, though, when you say things like that, my God, people start screaming socialism and communism and government. I'm like, for God's sake, man! One of the very reasons that you're so fucking miserable, and I live in small southern town America where worth and value is measured relative to everybody else, and I can go right downtown, and these are the most miserable sons of bitches that ever lived. None of them are happy. They're all mad about the same thing. Somebody else got something and it made them feel diminished as a human being. You know, and until I don't know how we get around that. I mean, I see these bumper stickers all the time. You know, my kid's a superstar at Shit for Brains Academy. Look, man, I get that you're proud of your kid, but again, it's just this constant, you know, like my kid's better because my kid goes to a better school and my kid has got this stuff and I have this big $70,000 truck. And so therefore we're better than you are. And that's what makes us special. You know? But see, America's always been that way. And you know, this you see this mentality of we're exceptional. Well,
can I give you a thought here for a second?
Aren't you? Yeah, you're going to turn us off, aren't you?
Do what?
You're going to shut us down, aren't you?
Dude, well, you guys have been 20 minutes over and the audience is saying, don't stop him, don't stop him. But I was going to ask you a simple question because we are coming into the end of it. Any thoughts on the fact that Mouse just hit bestseller again?
I'm jealous. I really want them to ban one of my books. It's like, actually, they did a favor. They made us Holocaust conscious again. It starts, you know, when the last survivor dies, then the Holocaust deniers can say, well, you know, this is all a hoax. It was made up. And believe me, my family, my grandmother lost 33 members of her family at Auschwitz. So this is a very personal thing for me. But the Holocaust deniers, you know, they know they're talking a lie. They know it's bullshit. They know they are lying. And they do it anyway because there's some political agenda that I have no idea what they're trying to do, but they know they're full of shit. And the fact that Mouse is now back on the bestseller list is making people conscious because in a sense, and I gotta say this, in a sense, we are all Holocaust survivors, all of us, because we now live in a world where we know that kind of evil is possible.
Yeah. Well, and again, I love, it may be, I haven't been able to verify it, but there's a quote floating around from Stephen King from the other day who said, don't get mad when people ban books. Say to yourself, why were those books banned? And then go to the public library or go to the store or go to Amazon and buy a copy of that book and read it for yourself and find out what ideas it is that they're trying to keep from you and teach your children to do the same thing. And I'm paraphrasing here because it's not like that. And I see it's attributed to King, but I also see a hell of a lot of things attributed to Stephen King. On the other hand, it sounds very much like something Stephen King would say. And that's a guy who's had some of his books banned. And I agree with that sentiment that you're going to ban this book. By God, first of all, are you serious? The reason in Tennessee, this Tennessee school board supposedly banned Mouse was that there was profanity and nudity, which were cartoon mice. Okay, anyway, if you think that your children in the age of the internet aren't seeing that, and far worse, every day, you are a goddamn fool. Your kids have access to all the information of humanity, and there is no goddamn way you can keep them from finding out. So as a school board, a bunch of these little busybody religious goofs, these little conservatives who want to keep ideas from their children, the worst goddamn nightmare for these people is to actually ban something, because the first thing that's going to happen is their kids are going to go home and Google it.
They actually, you know, they said they weren't against teaching the Holocaust. They just didn't think this was the best. Right. I said, okay, I'll suggest an alternative: The Theory and Practice of Hell by Eugene Kogan.
There you go.
Now,
there you go.
Back in the days of CompuServe, we had Holocaust deniers dropping into the political issues forum, and they would post their denial, and I would respond by quoting a paragraph from The Theory and Practice of Hell that talked about a specific incident. and then say, and this message is in memory of that person, and I'd name the person. And every time they would post a Holocaust denial, I'd grab a different horrific incident from that book and say, well, in the theory of practice of hell, and I'd quote. And some of the incidents, I will tell you, I had nightmares responding to those Holocaust deniers, but they gave up real quick when they realized that all they were doing was giving me a platform to refute their lies. Right. See, every lie is an invitation to tell the truth. And that's our job in the world. Is there's a lot of people who have these agendas and they will lie like crazy. They will, because they're going to gaslight you. Mm-hmm. And our response, our best, most humane, most important response is every lie is an invitation to tell the truth. Silence is agreement. Silence is death. But if we say that's a lie and here's the truth, every time up, pretty soon the liar learns to shut up. We won't change the liar's opinion, but if we shut the liar up, we create more space for the truth to be told.
These people need to be shoved back into the goddamn fringe and the shadows where they came from. Instead, I'd love to change their mind and make them see reality. But if they don't, I don't consider that my job. But it's like you said, they need to be, they're bullshit, they're conspiracy. I mean, this woman, did you see this woman yesterday? I mean, I think I wrote about it a little bit on Twitter. This woman was talking about, she's supposedly a doctor, talking about COVID vaccines are quantumly entangled to 5G. I'm like, listen, you are not qualified to have any conversation that involves any of those words that you just used. You need to shut up, sit down, and people say, well, she's entitled to her opinion. She's entitled to her opinion. She's not entitled not to be mocked for it, especially when she's telling people.
You're entitled to you're not entitled to an opinion. You're entitled to an informed opinion.
Right. And
that's Harlan Ellison.
You can, and God, I wish he was around, but
Me too.
You're entitled to speak your piece, but you're not entitled to be free of the consequences of speaking your piece, nor are you entitled not to be ridiculed in public when you show up with this silly bullshit on my timeline. And I'm not going to pull any punches. And the one that cracks me up is the last couple of days I've had people coming to me and saying, listen, man, it's really not appropriate for you to be dancing on these people's graves. Kiss my ass. I'll tell you what, I'll dance on their goddamn. These people are idiots. They kill themselves. It's suicide by petulance. You're morons. We live in the second decade of the 21st century, and you're drinking your own piss. You damn right I'm going to dance on your grave. Ha ha, you died because you're stupid. Right? Darwin's laughing at your ass. My God, man, if you don't want to be mocked for killing yourself by drinking your own pee and not taking vaccines, you have come to the wrong guy. I feel no shame about it. My God, the world is full of people that are underserved, underprivileged, that scrabble every day just to get enough calories to stay alive. And you stupid privileged son of a bitch, you have everything handed to you, and all you got to do is get a shot and give a shit about anybody else, and you don't, and it killed you. If I could still dance, I would, and if that makes me a bad person, so be it.
Well, Jim, you know what I've been reading on the internet is I read a couple stories.
Never read the internet, man.
Oh, here, just a second. I read a couple interesting pieces that basically these COVID deniers have reintroduced the concept of human sacrifice into our society.
Yeah, they wanted old people to die. Yeah.
Right.
Remember, as well, it only affects old people, so I'm not going to worry about it. But this goes back to this goes back to the 80s when they said, well, AIDS only kills drug users and queers. So, why should we bother trying to cure this disease? So, oh, thanks a lot. So now we know who's disposable in society. Well, it's just changed. Now it's just old people. By the way, I'm still in that category.
What the hell? Hey, get out of it.
Hey, how about I'm important this time and we kill a few Republicans? Right? Well, maybe they're disposable.
I just had this. I had this yesterday. Some woman who's allegedly in her 70s was yelling at me on Twitter about, I'm like, first of all, lady, you live in Texas. and you voted, you're Republican, you voted for Dan Patrick, a guy that literally said to your face, people your age should be willing to take one for the team because the stock market is down. And you voted for this guy? My God, do you even know what the hell ideology you're voting for? And on one hand, are you that ignorant? On the other hand, if you're not that ignorant, what the hell is the matter with you? You know, what are you goofy? I mean, seriously, I'm not saying like lady, I'm not saying you got to vote for Hillary Clinton if that's your problem, but you're actively voting and supporting an ideology that is openly trying to kill you. I don't know. You know, people say, well, we got to build bridges. I'm not building bridges with these people. They're nuts. They're nuts. They're crazy. I don't want to build any bridges with these people. I don't know. We've tried everything. We tried reason. We tried logic. We tried empathy. We tried a sense of community. We tried duty. We tried science.
Ridicule. We tried ridicule.
Everything. You know, and you still can't get through to them. Well, it's not my job, expressed or implied, to. I'm not a psychologist. It's not my job to treat mental illness. You know, and again, if that makes me a cold, callous bastard, fine, I'll own it. You know, the bottom line here is if you make it me or you, I vote me.
Yeah,
that's how it's going to be. And you know, the bottom line is just it's stunning to me. On the other hand, I'm not surprised by it because for my entire life we have walked past people starving to death on the street. We have walked past the hungry, the homeless, the poor, and we don't give a shit. And so it doesn't surprise me that a major political ideology of this country is based entirely on selfishness. I can't say I'm surprised. I'm disappointed, but I'm not shocked by it. And I don't see, at this point, you know, I mean, it used to be you could say, well, you know, you got Democrats, you got Republicans, you got conservatives, you got, you know, liberals, and there's ideas on both sides that have value. Frankly, I don't see a goddamn idea that's worth a shit on the Republican side of the house in the moment because
they have no vision for the future. Ask them, what's your vision for the future? They say winning. Whereas, winning. Yeah, and you talk, you know, getting even,
owning the libs. That's it. There's nothing beyond that.
Over on the Democrat side, you hear infrastructure, healthcare, minimum wage. You hear making things better for people. And so I can't understand why anybody votes for a Republican when there's nothing in it for you. Why are you voting for these liars?
Yeah, I think there's something. Are you losing an ankle there, David?
Yeah. Charlie is. We have a couple dogs in the other room who they look out the window and they bark at the invisible cat. So Charlie doesn't want to be left out.
It's like that's like the beagle. The shepherd takes off. The beagle doesn't know what the shepherd's going after. He just knows that it's his job to chase along and bark at the top of his lungs, and that's because that's what beagles do. And there's nothing happier in his life than he's roaming through the back couple of acres out here outside my office, barking at the top of his lungs, running around in circles, yelling at the butterflies.
I'll send you a coon dog to join him.
I wish the hell I was that happy, man. I mean, the beagle's pretty straightforward. He digs holes, he barks at things, he lays in the sun. I mean, that's a pretty great life, man.
Well, we have to remodel the kitchen, and there's still a little hole in from under one of the things that we can't patch up without tearing down the whole wall. And so we have an occasional mouse problem, and I think it's coming from the restaurant on the other side of the alley. So Charlie has been barking. I think a mouse. I have got to stop snacking in my office because I found some mouse evidence. So that's what Charlie's been barking at. Is the mouse has been behind the boxes, and so you can see there's boxes over there. So Charlie's trying to get at the mouse.
Guys, now that we've gone from Jim, that was one of the best. If I could
rant.
just take
it was
that,
a rant. It was a great rant.
And turn it into a Facebook video, I would. Or I could actually, but I'd want your permission. But Uh, did I just hear you say granted?
I sure go right ahead. And
I'll talk to my daughter because I tell you, you're gold, man. But
oh well,
let me just say it has been such a good episode hearing from you guys on these subjects. I'll get you all the links so that you can get it up and share it with your
Right.
friends because it deserves to be. And is there any closing points you want to make?
I
on
just
your
say,
subject?
I'll say once again, David, congratulations. It's a
Thank you.
well-earned award. I can't think of anybody that's more deserving, and I mean that honestly, not just because we're friends and because I admire you, but I really think that your work is, like you said, I think Bob and Jenny would be proud. And
I just want to write, it's not about the awards as much as I want to write the best story I can and have the story be memorable. If people want to validate those stories with awards, I'm happy to accept them. But the
Absolutely.
goal over here is to just,
or the check even.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely the check.
Accept that as well.
The greatest award that any writer can ever get starts with "pay to the order of."
That's exactly right.
The rest is nice too. Yeah.
You are two of my favorite awardees.
Thank you. But again, I'm very honored by the Heinlein Award. So thank you.
You should.